making a video. Yes, I was going to a physics room, but yeah, I got some things to think about. And I figure I won't bother making a video while I think about them, as I just don't see it being productive. But anyway, that's a different subject. And there was other things I was going to do, and I said, no, I can't do that, I got to do something else. So anyway, what I did do was I did a couple more pieces on this thing. You know, this video will probably be replaced in the future with something more concise and... Yes. Whatever, I don't know what to call it yet, but anyway, so it has more pieces in it. Some asshole left a comment on the other message board saying something about how it didn't work, and that I don't know JavaScript or some kind of shit, and you're just... I mean, I'm just... you know, so sick of commenters. Such idiots. Anyway, let's see if I can find a little stupid piece. Auto refresh is off. That's right, I'm reading. The buttons don't work. Okay, here we go. Buttons, yes, no, not working at all. Are you sure you understand what you are doing in JavaScript? Question mark. I mean, just if you're going to make, you know, I was talking to this with somebody else too. It's, you know, there should be a penalty. You know, if people give me links to stuff and I say, you know, it's just such garbage links, right? So some guy linked to some paramecium thing, or he mentioned it as an experiment that proves that parameciums learn. And if you read the experiment, you find out that, no, parameciums get tired, and they behave different when they're tired. Yeah. And so it looks like they're learning how to escape, but no, what they're learning is how not to futilely go the wrong way. And when you turn the experiment upside down, it's exactly the opposite result, which is the parameciums seem to get dumber. See, but they don't really get dumber. It's just that tired means a different thing when the experiment's upside down. So, nothing to do with parameciums learning. But Piro will cite it, these people will cite it, and it's garbage science, it's junk, absolute crap. The conclusions are not consistent with the evidence. And how many times do you get to do that in your lifetime? How many times do you get to cite wrong information? It's that whole crying boy, crying wolf thing. Isn't there a point where somebody could just say, shut the fuck up? Because I can't trust you. Because what you say is true isn't true. You know, you're unreliable. It should mean something. So all these trolls and all these assholes who want to engage in this argument where they just throw crap and see if it sticks, they should pay a price for how much of their crap doesn't stick. And that's a real flaw in our civilization, is that people's arguments have no history and no context, and people are just so full of shit. So anyway, I think this answer is no, and then so that button worked. Alright, so let's move this. And that button worked. Alright, now you got the evidence. And that button worked. Alright, why don't you acknowledge... And that button worked. A little bit of wind, but I think... Yeah, that button worked. So, I think we're about done. Yeah, there we go. 7 steps. Yep. 7 steps, I think. You know, something like that. 6 maybe. Anyway, so I think it's a fairly interesting concept, and yeah, no one said a damn thing about it. So link below in the description to it, and if it really doesn't work, let me know. I mean, it works on my Android, it works on my browser, so, you know, I don't do extensive testing. I just Firefox and, you know, say that's good enough for me. You know, I mean, technically they're all the same nowadays, so it should work. If it works in one, it should work in all, so whatever. Anyway, to get to the video. Because it's sort of about this whole argument thing. So the premise of this website, which, you know, it's just crude to start with. I'm just going to, you know, I got a ton of questions, and it'll just be a little sloppy at first. And I can just fix it by just fixing each one of these little 3-minute videos. But anyway, the point is that there's an argument to be had, and it isn't that complicated. It really isn't. Understanding being here, being human, isn't... no reason to be stunned or mystified or confused. by any of it, really. I mean, the truth is so accessible, and we should be able to argue it fairly successfully, because it is so solid in a sense. And that failure not to argue it successfully is our failure in a sense, because it really, you know, the facts are there, and we should be able to get the job done. So anyway, Anti-Bullshit made, you know, this video quality is rather poor, but anyway, the vegan mindset and genital narrowness, genital narrowness, thin penises, I guess. Anyway, I don't think those two subjects have much to do with each other, but whatever. I really hate Anti-Bullshit, man. It's just become such a word-of-file. I mean, it's, you know, I just kind of hate the form of his rhetoric, because he throws in too many angular words, or however you want to put it. So anyway, so this is basically about getting things done, and whether it matters, doing the right thing for the wrong reason, or all that kind of stuff. You know, whether it matters what motives are, whether it matters. Well, anyway, so I use it as an example, something. So again, it's just kind of this obscurely obtusey, weirdy little example. So is it better to convert 4 people to 25% veganism, or to convert 5 people, or to convert 1 person to 100% veganism? Because see, the 5 adds up to 125%. And you know, the first thought that came to my mind was just the obvious one, that a 100% vegan person would be a better spokesman for veganism, obviously. They'd have more of a passion for it, no doubt. So their impact on the world will probably be greater than their veganism. Because again, the veganism, in my opinion, isn't really about veganism, like saving animals directly. It's really about a personal acknowledgement that the game sucks and I'm not going to play it. That's what it sort of is to me. You know, because the scale is so insignificant to the problem, that you've got to realize that I've got to do so much more than being vegan. That's not even close to an answer. And the bigger subject requires some sort of acknowledgement of my investment, because I'm not going to be able to work for the bigger subject if I can't even do this minor thing of the inconvenient, you know, the inconvenience of migrating off of meat. And again, it's just migrating. I mean, the whole idea of being strictly vegan, you know, is you can't even, you know, once you get into these arguments, again, vegan defined by whose standards. It's about active neurology, and it's about lives that were created by us, not lives that nature's going to kill anyway. I mean, a real practical argument can be made that if people ate the fisheries to death, that would be better for the fish. If we made them extinct by eating them all, we did them a huge favor overall in the long term. So arguments like that can be made, that animals in nature slaughtered for food would be great if we weren't culling them. Culling is like farming. So controlling population is farming, and farming is evil, because that's the same thing as planting it yourself. But so again, these are what the kind of the arguments being played with. I mean, is it better to just you know, you could argue that the best thing humans could do would be to drive everybody insane on Earth and cause huge catastrophes and a nuclear war, but do you really want to win that way? I mean, I could, you know, certainly that's an argument to be made, that it might be better just to become a capitalist, vote for Trump, try to vote for every lunatic, the craziest fuck you can find. Every time there's an election, vote for the crazy fuck, so you can create as much chaos in the world as possible and the highest likelihood of nuclear war. It would be good to vote for that, because that gets you to the end. But because there's no certainty in that strategy, you can't really endorse it. I mean, but if it was a certainty, if you knew for sure it would work, yeah, you'd have to invest in it. But that's the only thing that stops you, is the uncertainty and the idea that, well, in an uncertain environment, my first choice should be reason. My first choice should be do it right, not do it deliberately wrong. I should break it honestly, not pretend to have an accident, kind of a thing. There's probably some better, you could probably think of some better metaphor for doing something accidentally on purpose, or doing it the backhanded way, the sneaky way, causing something in this indirect way rather than directly. So I guess my argument overall would be is that I don't negate the existence of these arguments. Somebody could argue to me that, Gary, I got a plan. I will murder you in a preposterous way. Like, I'll come over to your house and I'll kill you, and I'll string your intestines all around the house, and I'll do all kinds of weird, bizarre shit, and make it really interesting so the news all covers it. And when they cover your death, it'll make you famous, and then they'll watch your videos, and then you'll have accomplished your goal of maximizing your capacity to affect the world. And yeah, it might be rationally true that might be a good strategy. Might be good to have a plane crash on me. Might be a lot of things that would be good ideas, theoretically, possibly, maybe. But we don't know what my potential is. We don't know if I still haven't said something worth saying that hasn't been said yet. So I might not be completed. I might not have completed my task here on Earth in terms of maximizing my capacity to make an influence, make an impact. So, but these are all rational in a sense. I mean, even though it sounds irrational, even though it appears irrational, these are rational considerations in the circumstance we're in. Because the objective really is, stop this meat grinder. We're not really trying to save animals from falling in. The real objective is to stop there being something for them to fall into. So it's like you're trying to break the machine, not to break its function. As funny as that sounds. Alright, so anyway, so yeah, I'm not, so my point is I don't discount this conversation as having some relevancy in some place in the universe, but it doesn't have any relevance as a philosophical argument. This is strategy stuff. You want to argue strategy, that's fine, but I'm saying anybody arguing strategy is doing so in an environment of uncertainty and somewhat extensive confusion about what the real implications will be and what the downside risk of your boldness might be. So a bold act, like killing me, might have some sort of, there could be catastrophic negative effects to the cause that could happen because of that, because you didn't anticipate them. So I'm just saying, it just opens the big risk mess, where the philosophical conversation is outside of the risk mess. It's just about the principles involved. And that argument should be clean of conversations about impure motives. We really shouldn't have to indulge in conversation with people who are poorly motivated, or who are on our side for the wrong reason. I'm against immigration, but not because not because of any racial reason. So somebody who's a racist, he's just against immigration because we're all turning brown or something. Well, yeah, I don't want him on my side because he's motivated by a wrong reason. I don't like foreign culture, okay? I don't like religious kooks. I don't think we should import idiots into our country. I don't care what color they are. I just don't think they should be idiots. I don't think idiots have any real use anymore. Okay, there's very few ditch diggers we need anymore. We don't need idiots. We need people who can do something productive. And kooky religious fucks can't do anything productive, because even if they can do some decent work now and then, they ruin the value of it with their stupid, preposterous bigotry and fascism. So fuck that. Alright, side subject, but you get my point, is that being on the same side doesn't mean you're on the same side. And yes, a lot of vegans are not on the side of animals. They're on the side of vogue, looking good, living longer, being one with nature. Okay, so they're essentially sleeping with the enemy. They love nature, and they think we naturally or should be vegan because we're naturally vegan animals, and we are. And I think factually, it's quite obvious that we've spent more time in the last 50 million years being vegetarian than predators. We have very few predator features. Almost zero, frankly. We don't have any. There's nothing, we don't even come close to having a predator's form or shape. Absolutely nothing. Not even close. I mean, it's not even close to a rational argument, and people still make it like... And it's a ludicrous argument. I mean, there's just absolutely... We couldn't be more destructible rather than indestructible. We couldn't be, it couldn't say prey animal bigger. I mean, it's just written right on us. Well, anyway. Alright, so... So the argument is that there's a ton of these vegans who are really useless, in the sense that they really don't want to break the meat grinder. They're just doing this superficial thing, that a few little things that look like a few cute things, they want to keep the cute things from falling in or something, but that's about it. It's just it's a minor, they have no conceptual understanding of the real problem, so they're just doing this little mopping up stuff. There's sewage on the floor. They're saying, ooh, that sewage. They can see the obvious torturing animals bad. They can see that much. But they really can't see where it comes from or what the cause of it is. And that in everyday life, there's no such thing as being vegan anyway. Everything you do is potentially harmful to an organism. Breathing is consuming the necessary life cycle death of organisms every day. Even growing vegetables requires fertilizer. I mean, it's just silly not to think that the system is got a ton of hidden grinding in it, and that this idea of being a pure vegan is not very practical. And then somebody raised it in here and was talking about, well, he brought in fish, which fish is a little tricky, but clearly naturally born fish are going to die. Nature is going to kill them horribly, no doubt. So if you kill them, you're probably doing them a favor, because it'll probably be quicker than the natural death they're slated to have, and you'll likely interrupt their capacity to reproduce. The sooner you kill them, the better, logically. And then other organisms like shellfish and stuff, not crabs, and see, there's all these words are a little bit messy. Mollusks and stuff like that. They don't have barely any kind of brain. So yeah, it's really not, it might not be much of an issue. They're not much more than plants. Anyway, alright, keep going here. So what, the thing that I mean, there's an Anaconda comment in here, and some of it's just kind of, you gotta say, oh, it is kind of funny. But I wanted to just make sure that I don't, I just want to get to Anti-Bullshit Man's point here. And he's also done this video on about, he keeps listing these charities as if this means something. Like there's good charities and bad charities. When most of these charities, again, are misdirected. I mean, you're not doing an animal a favor like capturing cats and cutting their nuts off, okay, and then re-releasing them, in my opinion, is cruelty. It's not doing the animal any favor. When you have it in anesthesia, you should just kill it. There's absolutely no reason to put it back in the wild with its nuts cut off. I mean, it's fucked up. So there's still some huge amounts of illogic in these causes. And the only real cause there is this argument to get people to understand that they're on our Earth. They're technically the smartest organism on the planet. They have to be the bus driver. They're going to have to make the big decisions here, because there's nothing else capable of making the big decision. And the big decision is understanding that there's no point in killing 10 lion cubs to create a mating pair, splendor in the grass bullshit, so they can die someday. You know, pretty tragically, again, slowly and harsh, brutally. Yeah, and that's our responsibility, because we're the smartest thing on the bus. And there's these people like Anaconda who don't think it's their responsibility. So if they know how to fly a plane, and they're on a plane, and the pilot's just dropped dead of a heart attack, or both of them, he's going to say, not my problem. I mean, that's his attitude. If he has a parachute, let's say, he'll just say, fuck the rest of you, you're not my problem. I'm just parachuting, fuck you, goodbye. Because I didn't create the problem, somehow it's not my problem. And that's just bullshit. It's your problem, you're living here, you're on the lifeboat, you're part of the game, and you're going to have to take responsibility for the game. The game we're playing, the game you're feeding on, the capitalism you're eating. You have to take responsibility for what it does in the world. I mean, he keeps bragging on communism as if this alternative of capitalism, hasn't been a rape. And it's kind of irritating because the anti-bullshit man brings up that stupid Pinker guy or something in this silly argument that we're somehow less violent, when all we've done is migrated our violence into a huge amounts of collateral damage. Yeah, not as many soldiers die, but a lot more regular people are ground up by the game. The wage slavery we've created in the world, in a sense, is worse than slavery, frankly. Slaves, in a sense, people had to take care of because they were property. You couldn't just let your slave starve to death. You had to give it health care. You had to preserve its life to get most value out of it. You don't have to do that in China. China, you hit 40 years old in China, yeah, you're disposable. And I don't got to pay you a pension. I don't got to worry about you. I'm a business. I don't got to care. I'll get some young guy who can do it twice as fast because you're old and crippled now, pretty much. I've used you up. And now I'm just going to say, fuck you. So I'm just saying there was ethics built into slavery that were better than the ethics possessed by the capitalists. But anyway. So part of the theme, again, in this conversation becomes one of people are just too stupid. They just follow whatever the tribal leaders say, blah, blah, blah. You can't change anything. You can't fix anything. That's, of course, Anaconda Rod's attitude. People just flash pretty colors. People will follow the colors. And I would argue that's all he does in his propaganda. He just keeps waving the Pol Pot flag and the Stalin flag and the Hitler flags. And he doesn't want to talk about the actual subjects, of policy and fairness and decency and the fact that you can have these things without Stalin or Pol Pot. And you certainly don't need Donald Trump. Anyway, so, going a step further. So, study the career of an idealist who slowly slid into either extremism or cynicism. So again, he's just going to say this is what idealism always leads to. is that you become some sort of fanatic who does something stupid, or you just get eaten up by frustration and you just become an alcoholic. No. Just when you thought humans couldn't get stupider, then the fork in the road becomes very stark. You either lower your expectations or lower your standards, which frankly are the same thing. Your standards are your expectations, so I don't understand that at all. I'm neither vegetarian or vegan, but I think the problem is universal and ultimately insoluble. So that's his argument always is this isn't my problem, and even if it was my problem, nobody can fix it, so I don't have to worry about it. I don't have to go to this war because this war can't be won. And that's his argument, and it's a bullshit argument. People do things for reasons even they might not be aware of. Yeah, and sometimes they do things for reasons they are aware of because something makes logical sense. Do unto others as you would have others do unto you. Yes, okay, it's in a book of silly shit, but it's clearly a sensible principle. Yes, it makes sense for me to expect to get what I give. Yes, that's another way of saying that. Yes, I should expect to get what I give. So if I spit in people's faces, I probably should expect that people will spit in my face. Yes, that sounds logical. Now, that doesn't require anything but a little bit of reasoning skill, and it changes people. I think it does. I think logical statements change people. I think that's true. Anyway, and things like groupthink, peer pressure, fadishness, and general desire to fit in are, in my opinion, far more powerful a motivational force than ethics. So ethics as an understanding of obligation, he says, is weak, and that the strong force is the be one of us, make America great again, be on our side. And yeah, that's clearly in the world we exist in, where our media culture is this silly media culture, where news is never news, it's just propaganda, that yes, this is a problem for people, because it does become an us and them thing. They simplify things, they don't tell the whole fucking story, they just tell the outrageous parts. What makes the news is there's 400 million people in America, and the news people basically say, what did the silliest 10 people in the country do today? And we're going to call that something we all should talk about. We should all talk about what the 10 silliest people in America did today. We shouldn't talk about what it is to be a human, shouldn't talk about anything that's really relevant to being human. We should talk about what the insane people in America did today. And that's just, when you think about it, that's just, well, that sounds pretty stupid. Why are you talking about something that's aberrant and abnormal and almost irrelevant as anything you can do anything about? I mean, you can't fix mental illness tomorrow, so why are we talking about what the mentally ill did today? We should be talking about what people who have a brain and can reason should be thinking today. What they should be aware of, what knowledge they should have to be competent to vote. What knowledge they should have, what understanding of mechanism and stuff they should have to be deciding what policy is going to be. What a good tax balance is, what incentives we should have in our society, what punishments, what penalties. They should have some knowledge to be able to do those things, and they shouldn't have knowledge of what crazy people did today. They should have knowledge of what is the truth of human capacity and the power of knowing how something works. If you know the principle, then you can build the airplane. But if you don't know the principles, you can't. I'll have to do for an analogy, but you get the point. The point is knowledge is powerful. And instead of spreading knowledge, assholes like him just spread propaganda. The same defeatist, you can't do anything about it, there's nothing that can be done about it, it is insurmountable, it is not blah 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 blah. And then he does his Hitler, Stalin, Pol Pot thing. He takes complex subjects, turns them into simple mush that he can pigeonhole into slanderous niches. And say, there, I've done philosophy, I've done ethics. That's not ethics, asshole. That's flag waving. That's just flashing glitter. That's a fireworks show, with a big Jesus finish. Anyway, let's see. Those of us who are after better outcomes have no reason to obsess over human motives and whether they are mostly conceited or mostly non-conceited. So that's anti-bullshit man's quote. You don't see the sting in the tail of this. So there's somehow a sting in the tail of not caring about motives. And I guess I would say that I do see the sting in the tail of not caring about motives. But the sting only exists because of our inability to know for sure. Like I said, if we could know for sure that killing Adolf Hitler prevents World War II, and stops more horror than would inevitably happen because we'd only be putting the war off and then the Germans would end up with a nuclear bomb. When you kill Adolf Hitler, the war doesn't happen for 10 years, and then 10 years later, Germany has the nuke. Something like that. So in a sense, killing Hitler could be the worst move rather than the best move. And it's the fact that we don't know how good a move it is, that we can only do what we can rationally think in terms of a rational plan, not an irrational plan. So it's always best to go with the rational plan, unless you're certain that the irrational plan actually works. So yes, being poorly motivated or being counterproductive to the short-term cause for a long-term gain does make sense. So me killing all the vegans tomorrow, somehow I could be certain, led to more vegans 50 years from now, I would logically have to kill all the vegans. Because I knew it for a certainty. That the outcome is better in the long term, and that's the only term there is. Alright, so this is sort of interesting what anti-bullshit man asked here. So he says, a question that cuts through all this bullshit. If you suddenly acquired the combined wealth of Bill Gates, Amandaga Ortega, Warren Buffett, Carlos blah blah blah, would you just close down shop, or would you make an effort to contribute some activist-friendly goal? If you close down shop, what would you do with all the money? What is there to do? I honestly can't think of much. Well, obviously we do with the money what the rich do with the money now, which is just put it in investments that return profit. And obviously that profit comes out of the people used by their wealth, in the sense of the investment capital isn't investment capital, it's profit capital. But this answer is just so perfectly anti-Kantivad, in terms of its wishy-washy mush. It isn't an either-or thing. So that's his answer. So he has billions, hundreds of billions of dollars. And instead of saying something like, yes, I have a lot of creative ideas about how to make the world a better place, how you could tomorrow reform things and make things so much better for people, where they don't need to exploit each other and where we don't have to pay this high price for our comfort. We can do it fairly, and we don't have to waste and squander. I can take a bunch of waste and squandering out of our reality. I can put solar panels on farms instead of on roofs and save people 80% of the value. That's right, I can give them their free solar energy. It's never free. But I can give it to them 80% cheaper by just not being a stinking, ugly, dirty, ratty bag of shit, and actually giving them what they paid for. I don't lose anything. I get back my money. I just don't get a profit. And they get a sensible, rational return in terms of 80% more value than what the fucking creepy little cruddy capitalist that this guy has a horniness for would give us. They steal 80% of the value. The capitalists selling the idea of put them on your roof. They're stealing 80% of the value of the panels. 80%. It isn't an either or thing. It rarely, if ever, is. Well, again, it pretty much is. You either are capable of understanding that the world is, there's many brokennesses that exist, and they're easily fixed, or you don't. And you certainly either understand that people are preposterously stupid, and at minimum what you could do with that money, in terms of a long-term vision, even if you said, okay, fuck the current needs, I could use that money to educate people to the fact that they are selfish monkeys, and that the only way a selfish monkey does better is he first has to know he's a selfish monkey. That's the first sign of intelligence. The first intelligent thought is to say, gee, I'm not smart enough. I need to go to school, and I need to get out of my monkey brain, my little self-obsessed gear work, and recognize that there's more gears going on. The game is much bigger than me. Right? I mean, recognizing that the game is bigger than you. That there's lots of pieces on the board, and the little dog is just as good as the Eiffel Tower, is just as good as the bowling pin, that all the little pieces are just as valuable. And that really the only game to play is to say, how can all of these pieces win? How do they all have a good time? Rather than go bankrupt. And that's the sensible thing to do, is say, I'm not going to play the game. I'm not going to play the game as designed by nature. The idiotic, I win, 100 people lose, so I can die of cancer. No, I'm not going to play that game. I'm going to play a rational game. And yeah, certainly with all that money, you might be able to get that message into people's heads and make them profoundly more elegant as thinking machines. My answer to that comes straight out of or the Serenity Prayer. Again, so yes, resort to the heroin of the alcoholic. They're the replacement drug. For their addiction problem. The pacifier they shove in their mouth. That's shaped like a bottle of whiskey. That they can chew on, which is this cop-out. I have no control. I'm not responsible. I mean, it's just such a lie. There's that which I can control and that which I cannot. And yes, of course, you get to conveniently, I think. I think that's the title of your book. Whatever's fucking convenient. What's in it for me? That's the title of his book. And that's how you define what you can or can't control, pretty much, is based on convenience. If it's inconvenient, all of a sudden I can't control it. And I think that's all it comes down to. It doesn't have anything to do with what's really possible. And what you know is in anyone's human potential. Anyone has the potential to be President of the United States. Anyone has the potential to be a Martin Luther King. And giving up without even trying, it's just a cop-out. It follows that there is that which I am responsible for and that which I am not, which again, that doesn't follow. Because your responsibility is built out of the whole chain of events that got you here. Where if you're in the lifeboat after the Titanic sinks, there's a whole chain that got you there. And buying your ticket, financing the building of the boat in the first place, a whole bunch of responsibilities are built into it. And then your whole existence, your whole family legacies, all kinds of stuff can be part of your responsibility. If I'm an emperor, a blue blood living on legacy wealth, I'm responsible, in a sense, for the fact that I'm living on a privilege made out of an unfairness and a cheat, a robbery. You have to accept that. You can't just keep walking up on the podium accepting the gold medal when you didn't earn it and say, I'm not responsible because the system gave me a gold medal. Well, you're taking it and you know what it's made out of. You know it's a cheat. It follows that is that which, okay, anyway, now me ask you a question. Does activism, as you understand the term, ever reach a position of enough in terms of the individual? No. Theoretically. Yeah, I mean, enough for what? Enough to say I'm doing the best I can? Yes, you can say that. I say that shit like that. Now, the truth is, sometimes I'm not doing the best I can. So I can write that down. I am not doing the best I can. Okay, so I wrote it down. I have to look at it and I have to acknowledge that sometimes that's true. Sometimes I could do better. If I really did read that every day or every 5 minutes, if I put that on my computer, I glue it on the wall, maybe I can do better. Because I'll know that every time I do cheat a little, every time I fall into self-indulgence that's not necessary to my survival, I'm not grinding as much out of me as possible. But that's the game, right? If you're really going to argue that there is such a thing, you know, so I'm saying if you are a true utilitarian, your work is never done, so to speak. I mean, there's this massive amount of work that needs to be done, and you know, trying to grind the best result out of yourself is going to be unpleasant and burdensome, harassing, and may require you to hang on a cross and die. It may require a full measure of devotion. You might have to jump on a fucking grenade. I mean, it might be incredibly demanding doing your best, doing the right thing. So, yeah, so in a sense, there is obviously there is a position of enough in the sense that, yes, there is enough in terms of you could demonstrate that you're doing all you can. But yes, the standard is awful high to actually be, to say you did all you could. That's hard to say. I think it's hard for any individual selfish human to say they did the best they could have possibly done if they hadn't been motivated a little better or acquired some better habits or exercised more discipline because their thought process was a little more demanding and they did beat up on themselves a little harder. They whipped themselves a little harder. They could have gotten more out of the donkey if they would have just whipped a little harder. Specifically, is there a position in life in which one can be said to be doing enough in terms of activism? Well, again, the proportions of the problem dictate the extent of your enoughness. So if you're in the Civil War on the battlefield and there's a bunch of guys with legs bleeding and broken legs and all kinds of shit going on and there's all kinds of horror and you're sitting there eating your Jell-O pudding, that would be sort of bullshit. It's a far short of what is necessary for you to maximize your performance in this circumstance. There is so much positive value for you to glean and for you to be stroking your own comfort neurons, to doing your little own endorphins, when you know what you need to do is endorphin all these other people who are fucking in horrible pain. Yeah, I don't know what to say. You're sitting there scratching your mosquito bite, you know, on the middle of that battlefield. That would make you a fucktard. I mean, if you can't, you know, figure out that there's better work for your fingers, there's more productive work than working on yourself. I mean, your question implies, if I read you correctly, that it is possible to say that someone is not doing enough. Is it not then responsible to say that it is impossible for somebody to be doing enough? Okay, that one I'm going to have to read again. I mean, your question implies, if I read you correctly, that it is possible to say that someone is not doing enough. is it not then reasonable to say that it is impossible for someone to be doing enough? I don't know. I don't know whether it matters. The real point is, the point I was trying to get to, is that any measure of work we get out of ourselves for the cause is good. The more we can motivate each other is good. And the more we do that for rational reasons, I mean good reasons rather than bad reasons, the more we do that in some sort of reasonable way, the better. And we shouldn't be doing it this left-handed way or this backhanded way because we have a strategy that says if I make him go crazy, he'll get more attention, and he'll be more effective, and he'll be blah, blah, blah. You know, some kind of bullshit. We should be able to have this, to honestly point out to each other that here's the problem, here's the magnitude of the problem. And is there a meal we don't need to eat? Is there a wank we don't have to have? Can we get a little more performance out of ourselves on the subject? Is there a movie we don't need to watch? Is there a whatever, you know, a bag of popcorn? You know, I'm just saying that, yeah, I'm not for us being miserable, but the fact is the horror that we're existing is so massive. It's really hard to say, you know, how, like I said, you really can't whip this mule hard enough in this circumstance because the need is so desperate and it's so massive. The future is going to be tormented by assholes like you, and it's going to be tortured, and any prevention is so valuable. It's torture you're preventing, absolute torture. Now, you know, I would do an awful lot of work to prevent my own torture. I would say it wasn't too much. It wasn't asking too much if I was preventing my own torture. So it's just your lack of vision to recognize that there really isn't a difference between the Monopoly piece of Little Dog and the Monopoly piece of you know, World Trade Center. Where, you know, they didn't make Empire State Building. There really isn't any difference. So if you sentence the future to horror, it's essentially the same thing as sentencing yourself to it. The easy street is a delusion. The rich white man in slavery was deluded. Most of the sentient organisms on his plantation were suffering slaves. The thing the plantation was producing was suffering. It wasn't producing comfort and joy and happiness and satisfaction and nice music and clean air. No, the substance of what it was producing as a bubble was a bad thing. And not understanding that you are the world you're making. You will live in it, in a sense. You will suffer your mistakes. So any mistakes you make in this life, you will suffer them in the future, in the sense that, yes, you personally won't. The guy who rode a red bicycle when he was 7, or who did this and did that, and all the stuff I did, yeah, that guy won't. But it'll still be a guy with a brain. A guy with some other blue bicycle memory. Who cares? It's going to be something close enough to the same thing that it just doesn't fucking matter. And that's when people get all glib and light-minded on the subject of what animals feel, chimpanzees and down, and pretend they're pseudo-conscious, when everything about consciousness as a biological function would indicate that it really is just you either are or you aren't. The function of the whip really only works as a whip. It only does one thing: make pain. That's what it exists for. Feelings exist to make discomfort. And there's no reason that the discomfort the lesser organisms are feeling would be just as big as our discomfort. There's reason to understand why something would get intelligent and that would change behavior, and that there would be a difference between intelligent and unintelligent behavior. But feelings have nothing to do with intelligence. Feelings are the motivating mechanism, and the lower animals are just as well motivated by their feelings as you are motivated by your feelings. We don't feel more. We think more. We don't feel more. And if you understand that, you understand how bad this is. That there's fully developed organisms, baby octopuses for example, and 10,000 of them will die to make one octopus that reaches maturity. Sea turtles, 10,000 of them will die for one mature turtle. That's the game nature's playing. That's the tune the grinder is playing. And it's horrible music. And these assholes telling you, just sit back and make it make sense. Just pretend it makes sense. They're fucking evil. They suck. In plain language, they're stupid motherfuckers, and their suggestions they're giving to the driver are really, really bad. So, that's probably enough of a rant. But yeah, it is an interesting subject. But like I said, it correlates to the website in the sense that this project of isolating the arguments and just getting to this crude, simple understanding of what we are as machines, and that's all we are. So anyway, there was some new guy who made a video, so sort of not terrible in terms of not calling me an asshole or something. But anyway, he was. What point did I want to make? Oh shit, I lost it. Yeah. But anyways, this idea of just making the argument that there's just this simple truth about what it is to be alive, and what it is to describe this mechanism, this 4 billion years of this life thing evolving, and what that actually means, and what it actually is doing. Oh yeah, the idea of desire is just an itch. I mean, Anaconda wants to turn desire into some complex, weird thing that we can't understand. And all it is a kind of emotional mosquito bite. It's just an itch. And you can't scratch it like you can scratch and bite. I got a mosquito bite. I can just scratch it. Well, desire is an itch you just can't scratch with your fingernail. You got to scratch it by getting the chick to notice you, or some other thing that you have to do. You have to scratch it in some having way. Some visual narrative. The narrative has to change. You get a get out of work free card. That was the weird thing about Monopoly. It didn't have any work in it. Which is kind of strange. No work involved. I mean, there should have been some acknowledgement that work is what makes all this stuff valuable. But anyway, doesn't matter. So till the next time, and such. Yeah, that's enough. You just go on and on and on, right? But it is just simple. So I guess my argument is that this should be a simple argument. Belief in God is nonsense. Belief in nature is idiotic. It's a crude force. It has no comprehension of the waste that it's perpetrating every day. No idea whatsoever of the Holocaust it engages in every day. And there's just no way for us to justify the price tag paid for these little bits of joy we squeeze out of our itches, scratching the few itches we can get to. Yeah. Alright, so that's enough now. Till next time. That's that.